this unit is about assessments and reflections, scaffolds and feedback. So the most important question one must ask is, why do we assess? Well, for various reasons, of course, to check why and how much our students have learned, but also to correct our courses, our ways and our lesson plans, to understand how we can change our strategies in order to improve learning, to control and to find deviations. How will we control? Well, we could control by understanding why are students making those mistakes. Remember the first point I said, to check not just how students have learned, but also why they are making the mistakes that they're making, or why they are achieving the targets that they're achieving. It's important to understand processes and to understand how to control misconceptions. It could be that one exposes them to wrong theorems and then makes them evaluate those theorems and see whether it really works in real life or not. And simple experiment that can be done is to understand how triangles would always measure up to 180 degrees if it is on one plane in a single dimension. It's just by making students experiment with varied triangles, create as many triangles as they can, and then try and measure. They might have to make large, huge protractors to create those angles. They may use tools such as GeoGebra as an application software to learn those angles and figure out whether they are true or wrong. But that is how we will try and enable them to overcome misconceptions and control the deviations in understanding properly. We also may want to give feedback to students so that students move in the right direction. So we assess in order to understand, are we in the right direction? Are students moving in that same direction? We also may want to enable students to focus, because when you give a target, make it seem like a competition, it does make people sit up and stay alert. We may also try and identify gaps and work on smaller tasks to improve those small, simple gaps. It could be spellings, it could be handwriting, it could be a misconception, as we discussed earlier. We do understand that competition makes them focus, but we also need to ensure that they are collaborative. So maybe group tasks could be looked at, but that is later. Assessment increases attention of a student to focus on a task. It enables them to realize and recapitulate for themselves what they had earlier comprehended, and their retention increases. It's not the case in all students. Students with learning disabilities, students with stress and emotional difficulties may actually find that assessment decreases their memory power, but overall, any pressure situation does sharpen our ways of responding. So that could be a reason why we assess. Not for everyone, but it works for quite a few. Assessment may increase the knowledge that they have of the concept, and it may increase the fact that they know that they know. That is very important, that they are aware of their knowledge. Assessment also increases the kind of confidence that they may have. If they do well, it increases their yearning to improve and to study more, which is one of the reasons why many of our favorite subjects are the ones that we scored well in. Well, it could also be that we scored well in the subjects we liked, but we also seem to work hard for the subjects that we did well in. It also enables us to develop life skills, to stand up to pressure, and so on. So the life skills is another reason why we may want to assess. Assessment is not just of what has been learned. not just of understanding if there is any learning gap that is there, but it is to try and see how we can improve. Why are the students making the mistakes that they are? What can we do about that to enable them to enjoy their learning and also learn? Feedback is very crucial in this. Assessment helps us to understand what are the areas that we need to give them more scaffolds in and how we can enable them to improve. In fact, as we go through formative assessment, we also get to understand how our feedback was effective, if it was effective, how much was it effective, and then also reflect on why it was effective. Assessment, therefore, is for these reasons, among others. Who should assess? Well, there are so many people who can assess. Of course, the teacher, of course, a resource person or a facilitator, but it could also be peers. It can be the students themselves self-assessing. At the end of a textbook, sometimes there is a checklist that asks you, have you learned all of these concepts? Students know for themselves whether they're confident in the knowledge that they have of a concept or not. Peers do ask questions of each other, and even then we know whether we know concepts or not. Parents do assess, sometimes at home, sometimes asking, what have you learned? And there is assessment through varied formats. It could be administering a test, etc. In COVID-19 situations, we have seen parents take a stronger, a larger role in teaching than ever. In fact, all stakeholders, textbook designers, curriculum makers, policy makers, examination setters, so many people are assessing the students' capabilities. Even in the community, sometimes there are questions asked of students. There are events and there are programs like Kaun Banega Crorepati, which are entertainment but also informative and test students and learners' abilities. So there are multiple people who assess. Who should assess? Definitely, of course, the teacher, and definitely the students themselves. When should they assess? Well, ideally, it could be continuously as ongoing assessment in order to improve. As I said, reflection is a great part of assessment, and feedback and understanding how to improve and trying to improve and setting mini targets to reach a goal is important. It could also be periodic with intermittent gaps, and it could be on a summative notion at the end of a syllabus completion, like a term end or a semester end break. So, we are looking at when to assess, why to assess, and who should assess. Let's look at another model in the next unit on how this can be done through scaffolding.